What happens when an elderly black man is thrown off an airplane by security just because he doesn't look like a passenger who can afford business class? And according to the flight attendant, he could only have been there by mistake, out of mercy or accident, not because he deserved it, not because he paid for it, not because he is entitled to it like any other person. He boarded early, not out of privilege, but out of necessity, because after 72 years and 2 knee surgeries, extra time on the bridge was not a luxury, but survival. And when the employee at the gate scanned his ticket, smiled and called him sir. He had no idea he would be treated so low and disrespectful. Michael just walked to his seat to sit down and relax. But that hope lasted exactly 7 minutes, not a second more, because that's when Megan Caldwell stormed into the cabin. She was late, noisy, trailing a rolling suitcase that bumped against every seat it passed, dragging a designer tote over one shoulder and a coffee cup that sloshed with each step. Still on her phone, still barking instructions to someone on the other end, as if the world owed her its full attention. The cabin, which had just begun to settle into a pre-flight calm, held its breath for a moment. And then, Megan looked up. She saw him, saw Michael sitting in seat 1A, and something in her face shifted instantly. Not confusion, not even anger at first. It was something colder, sharper, like she had just spotted a mistake in the design of the universe itself. She stopped dead in the aisle, tilted her head just slightly to the left, the way people do when they don't understand why the help is out of place. Then she narrowed her eyes, not to see better, but to judge harder, and said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Are you not confused? You're in my seat." Michael turned, outwardly calm and unperturbed, though something old and heavy was stirring inside his chest. He didn't raise his voice or sigh or argue. Instead, he moved deliberately, like a man who had had to prove himself many times before. With a confident, almost deliberate grace, he reached down and took the boarding pass from the armrest beside him. His hand moved slowly, but not from indecision, from control, from intent. The way a man moves when he knows truth is on his side. He clasped the ticket between 2 fingers, not to flaunt it, but to show it clearly, undeniably. And without breaking eye contact, he spoke in a voice so calm it cut through the air. "This is 1A. His finger touched the seat number printed in bold black ink, a seat that had cost him $487. But Megan didn't even look at the ticket. She just smiled the way people smile when they're trying to embarrass you in public without raising her voice, and said, "Are you sure you didn't mean 14A? Maybe you got the numbers mixed up, Grandpa." And her words made his chest tighten, because it wasn't just the seat he was sitting in, it was how she perceived him, as someone too old, too poor, too black to sit where he was sitting. Before he could answer, she raised her hand and waved to the stewardess as if hailing a cab, and Brooke, tall, sharp, too busy to pretend as if she didn't care, walked over and immediately turned to Michael with the look of someone who had already made up her mind before asking a single question. And when she said, "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" it sounded not like a request but an accusation wrapped in customer service. He'd given it to her, of course, because he had nothing to hide, but instead of checking the date, comparing names, or doing anything to confirm it wasn't his fault, Brooke looked at the ticket, then at Megan, as if she were solving a puzzle where the pictures didn't fit together, and said, "That's odd. You're both booked in the same seat." But she didn't stop to clarify, didn't offer to correct the situation, didn't apologize, just said, "Sir." Brooke's voice became quieter, almost affectionate, as one speaks to children or the sick. "Please understand, we're not saying you've made a mistake. It's just that we need a little flexibility right now. You don't mind moving, do you? It's not like it's the end of the world." Michael gripped the armrests, a faint shiver ringing in his fingers. "This is my seat. It's on the ticket. I'm not asking for special treatment. All I'm asking for is respect." Megan snorted, but covered it with a fake smile. "Jesus, what's the problem, Grandpa? It's not like they're kicking you off the plane. Just move back a couple rows. I'm not asking you to stand in the aisle. Do you want me to give up what I paid for just because it's more comfortable for you?" Michael asked quietly. Brooke intervened, still polite, but there was irritation in her voice. "It's a temporary measure. We'll deal with it later. The main thing is not to create tension on board." "So who's creating it?" Michael's voice trembled. "I didn't say anything. I answered politely. I showed you my ticket, and all you did was offer to let me leave. You didn't offer her a seat. You didn't check to see who checked in first. You just decided the old man could wait." Megan flaps her eyelashes, raising her voice slightly so those around her can hear her. "This is getting hysterical. What kind of grown man acts like that? The words hit as hard as a slap. His face tensed, but he still sat upright. Inside, it wasn't fear, it was the old, familiar anger. The kind that builds up over the years. The kind that knows how to wait. He knew this game. He knew how easily they could make him the last man standing. And he knew not to lose face at times like this. "I'm a grown man, miss," he said. "And you're a man who would rather humiliate than admit he was wrong." He didn't raise his voice, because black men aren't supposed to raise their voices without consequences. He didn't swear or yell or make a scene. He just said, "I'll say it again. I'm not getting out of the seat I paid for until someone shows me why I have to do it." And that should have been enough. But Brooke's eyes narrowed. Her tone became harsher, and without another word, she turned and spoke into the radio, in a quiet, fast voice. Too fast. That's what people who try to rewrite history, before it even begins to unfold, say. He heard the words non-compliance, violation, and possible threat, and in that moment he realized, they're building a lie now, and he's the villain in it. It didn't take long, maybe less than a minute, before two airport security officers entered the cabin with the kind of power that doesn't need facts or context, only purpose, and Megan stepped aside as if doing them a favor, as if clearing a path to justice, and Brooks silently pointed, and Michael didn't move, because he hadn't done anything wrong, because the seat was his, because the problem wasn't the number on the ticket, but the number of assumptions in their heads. They didn't ask questions, didn't check names, they didn't call the chief flight attendant. They didn't even try to hide their indifference. They just walked up, two airport employees in uniform, with feigned politeness and blank eyes, and one of them, a young white guy with a short haircut, took Michael by the arm as if he were already guilty. "Sir, please step off the plane," he said monotonously, as if repeating a learned phrase, as if he were not a human being but a bag of problems to be thrown out of the cabin before the flight was delayed. Michael didn't scream. He didn't struggle. He just lifted his head and calmly replied, "No, I'm not getting off until someone checks my ticket. Not until someone recognizes that I paid, that I didn't make a mistake, that I have a right to sit here." And at that moment, the fingers on his hand clenched tighter. Not painful, humiliating, as if they didn't believe him. Like he was a child, a cranky old man, an intruder. "Please don't make this any harder than it has to be," said the other man. A man in his 40s, with an empty, glassy smile. He didn't move, not out of stubbornness, but because he knew that if he got up on his own, they would consider it an admission of guilt. He remained seated, heavy, as if he'd grown into the chair. He resisted, only with the weight of his body, with dignity, with silence. But that was enough for them to call it resistance. "Sir, don't force us to," the first one began, and immediately the two of them, synchronized, began pulling him up. He didn't yell. He just said, "I've earned this place." But nobody listened. They dragged him, not harshly, but mercilessly, slowly, publicly, like a warning to the others, like a spectacle. One of the passengers started filming it on a cell phone. Someone gasped. Some turned away. Someone whispered, "This is wrong." But no one stood up. Michael felt his foot catching the bag, the chair strap dragging behind him. He felt a familiar feeling rise in his chest, not just resentment. It was humiliation, old, bitter, with the flavor of history, the kind that is passed down from generation to generation, but never becomes habitual. And he still clutched the ticket in his hand, as if it were the last document to prove that he was human. When Michael was about to be dragged to the exit, when his shoes clung to the carpeting and his eyes, full of shame, couldn't find a single point in the cabin where he didn't look, Megan stood the whole time, just stood there, arms crossed, as if waiting for the trash to be removed from her seat, a smug, barely perceptible smile on her lips, as if this whole theater had been arranged for her, and the final act was about to come. When Chair 1A was empty again, she leaned over and carefully placed her purse in it, black, with shiny handles, too expensive not to show her status. Then her jacket, then her scarf, all with the same face, as if she were the one who had brought order back to this flight. And only then did she walk up to Brooke, arms folded, as if she were going to give a thank you speech. "Thank you," she said, emphatically friendly. "I just couldn't believe. The nerve of it now. Did you see that?" He even argued. He wanted to stay. She laughed softly, so as not to sound angry. But there was anger in every word, cold, condescending. Brooke smiled back. Believe me, we don't like it when these misunderstandings happen either. The word was said in a tone as if it were about expired coffee, not about the man who had just been dragged out of the salon. I always say that if people had better manners, these situations could be avoided, Megan added with a theatrical shake of her head. You're absolutely right, Brooks said. Thank you for being so understanding. Not everyone is capable of such a dignified response. They stood side by side, like two actresses satisfied with a successful performance. And somewhere behind the door, outside the cabin, Michael was adjusting his jacket, looking down at the floor, and clutching his ticket in his fingers, now a little wrinkled, but still valid. And in that moment, it wasn't just resentment that boiled up in him. It was rage, but not the kind that bursts outward. It was the kind that stays inside, the kind that's memorized, never forgotten. Never. Michael's hands were shaking, not because he was afraid, but because he was angry, so angry that his pulse beat louder than the noise around him, the way it does when you're humiliated but told the truth. The way it makes your mouth taste metallic and lodges in your ribs. And as he stood outside the exit doors, he paid no attention to the stares of the staff, or the curious looks of the other passengers, or the complete silence of the people who watched him being removed like luggage to the wrong compartment, because none of them mattered anymore, just one person. Then Michael made just one phone call. It was his friend Howard. He was the owner of this airline. He didn't record a voicemail. He didn't ask someone to pass it on. He pressed the name Howard Fields, and the phone beeped briefly. Just one. Mike? Howard's voice was instantly recognizable. Warm, as always, but this time with anxiety, as if he already knew this call was no accident. Don't interrupt. I have to say it. And Howard fell silent. I was kicked out of first class today. By your airline. Right out of my seat. I showed them my ticket. It was an order. Seat 1A. But you know what the flight attendant decided? That I must have made a mistake. That I must have mixed up the numbers. Because I'm an old man. Because I'm not what they expect to see in this seat. Mike. No. Listen. All the way through. She didn't even check the data. She didn't even apologize. Called security instead. He exhaled heavily. I was escorted out. Slowly. In public. Like an unsupervised child. I resisted with only my body weight, only silence. And still they dragged me. People took pictures. Some turned away. And the one who took my seat thanked the stewardess. Called me insolent, rude. And nobody stopped her. He paused. There was silence on the other side. The kind of silence that only happens when someone holds back not just anger, but shame. I would never have called you, Howard, Michael continued. Not because of the lost luggage, not when my name was being twisted like it meant nothing. But today was different. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a demonstration of who they thought deserved to be in front, and who they didn't. When he finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line, Howard telling Michael the words of encouragement and apology he needed at that moment more than anything else. Howard told him that we were going to deal with it. He didn't ask Michael to hold the line. He didn't transfer him to someone else. He didn't promise to look into it or pass it on. He said he was personally calling the head of operations, security, legal counsel, and flight director, and asked only one question before hanging up. Where are you now? Michael answered him that he was standing outside the terminal now. 10 minutes later, the same two security officers who had pulled him out returned, but they looked different, not smug, not firm, but quiet, anxious, head slightly down, one of them holding a walkie-talkie but not speaking into it, and the taller one saying, Sir, Mr. Fields asked us to escort you. Fields has asked us to escort you to the waiting room, and Michael didn't respond right away, because his silence was no longer powerlessness, it was control, it was choice, it was the realization that he didn't owe them a damn thing, but he turned and walked anyway. Not with them, but in front of them, because this time he wasn't being escorted out, he was being watched, noticed, respected, or maybe just feared. The living room was too quiet. People were looking at him, but not in the same way they had before. Now it was a different kind of look, the kind of look people give someone they've misjudged, someone whose name might be more important than they thought, someone who might have connections, someone who might be influential. Michael sat down in the leather chair by the window and didn't touch the bottled water or the plate of fruit that was placed beside him. He just waited. The wait didn't last long. A woman in a dark blue blazer with a clipboard and the look of someone trying to put out a fire without getting burned came up to him and introduced herself as a regional account manager. But Michael didn't care who she was, he wanted to know what she knew. And when she began, "We're deeply sorry," he interrupted her. "Do you know what kind of place I had?" She blinked. Yes, sir. 1A. And do you know when I bought it? Yes, it's on record. 3 weeks ago. So why was I taken off it without an inspection? She opened her mouth, then closed it, then said, "We're investigating how it happened." No, you're reacting. There's a difference. And she didn't argue, because she knew he was right. At that moment, the phone rang again. Howard. He picked up on the first ring. "I've arranged a flight," Howard said without preamble or pause. "Not a commercial one. You'll go home on my plane. It's already waiting. I've also authorized a full refund and am suspending all flight personnel for retraining and internal review, starting with that flight attendant who decided your skin color tells her more than your boarding pass." Michael was silent for a long time. Not because he was depressed. It was because the realization that he had been believed, truly, completely, immediately, was stronger than the humiliation. And when he finally stood up and thanked the woman with the clipboard, she didn't ask for anything in return. She simply said, "We'll escort you to the runway." He walked through the airport like a man returning from something, not running from it, not hiding from it, but carrying it. And as he approached the gangway of a private jet with the logo of the very company that had tried to wipe him off the face of the earth a few hours ago, he looked back, not to gloat, but to remember what it had cost him to get here. After all, sometimes justice doesn't feel like victory. It just feels like breathing again. If this story moved you even half as much as it moved me, then maybe it's time we stop staying silent. These stories matter because they reflect real lives, real struggles, real truths. And if you're someone who believes that too, then stick around. There's so much more we need to say. So many voices still waiting to be heard. And hey, tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from? I'd love to know where these stories are reaching hearts.